Namaste. Thank you for visiting SMRITI. Today in our SMRITI Talks, we have Dr. Raj Raghunathan. Welcome, Raj. It is a great pleasure to have you here. So before we begin, just a quick intro about SMRITI. SMRITI is building a repository of the ancient Vedic body of knowledge, wisdom, awareness, experiences, shared from ages in written and also oration from many of our great rishis, teachers, and now our contemporary scholars and authors and researchers like you. In this presentation of SMRITI Talks today, we have you here. We want you to share your research findings in the pursuit of happiness. That is your subject area expertise. I mean, if you remember, my first meeting with you was online through your course offered Coursera back in 2016, and on happiness, life of happiness and fulfillment. And I audited your course and then followed your journey after too. I mean, you've been going around in that pursuit of your research on the happiness project, that I was intrigued by your journey. And here we are. If you can introduce yourself, we can go from there.
Thank you very much, Satyavani. It's a great pleasure to be here, and a great big hi to all the listeners. As you mentioned, my name is Raj Raghunathan. I am a professor at the Macomb School of Business in the marketing department, but I teach a class on happiness. So it's a very unusual thing that I do, and I've been doing it for 10 years now. I also have an online course that you took, A Life of Happiness and Fulfillment, which was released in 2015, but subsequently there's another course released in 2019, last year in November, called Happier Employees and Return on Investment course, which is HEROIC for short. And that course is focused on organizational happiness. So a lot of the stuff that I do, I've been doing for the last 10 years has been around the topic of happiness. And again, I mean, it's a great pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Stories are empowering, as you know, and I'm sure you have a lot to say. Before we begin in the subject matter, I want you to share your story, your journey. How did it all begin? Where did it start? I know you lived in, you are a professor of marketing, and you have decided in US of the kickstart of happiness.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, stories can have different kind of focal points, and I can give you a story about my interest in sports, about my family. I think you're interested in the story behind how I got to teach a class on happiness, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yes.
And so I, you know, was always very, very interested in the topic of happiness. It seemed kind of like a no-brainer to me, even as a kid, that the ultimate purpose in life is to lead a happy, fulfilling, meaningful life. And I've always kept that in the center of my attention, even if I've done other things that didn't seem to necessarily be leading me towards that goal, you know, like studying hard and getting into an engineering college and getting into an MBA school and doing those kinds of things weren't necessarily consistent with what I thought I needed to do in order to be a happier person. But I nevertheless did it because those were the things that everybody was doing, you know, and it was recommended to me by my parents and so on and so forth. So it wasn't until I got into my PhD program at NYU that I realized that here I was, okay, just kind of checking off boxes and doing things that everybody thought was a respectable thing to do, the next stage in your life's progression, so to speak. And I thought, here I'm in the PhD program, and I can actually literally study whatever topic I want to study, okay? I mean, you know, it's in marketing, the PhD is in marketing, so I couldn't do astrophysics, for example, but I could definitely study things that related to emotions and happiness and so on. And so I decided to turn to that topic, and I started researching questions like, does sharing a happy experience with another person increase its happiness, or can it actually reduce the happiness from sharing? And it turned out that it could reduce it if the other person had a different view of what it is that you were sharing. You know, you could watch a movie and the other person doesn't like the movie, you like the movie, your enjoyment of the movie actually goes down. So things like that. And in 2006 and 7, I realized that, this is when I got tenure. I had spent 6 years at the University of Texas at Austin, and now I'd actually gotten to a point where I had this job for life, so to speak. That's what tenure is about. And the idea behind tenure is to give the faculty the freedom to do what they truly, deeply want to do. And for me, it was always happiness. And so I turned around to putting together a course on happiness. It took me a good 2-3 years to actually start teaching the course. So in 2009 is when I began. And I thought, this is an unusual course. I knew that. And a lot of my friends, faculty were giving me friendly advice saying that, hey, this is great that you're doing it, but also realize that in a business school, people are not interested in happiness. They're interested in making money. So you maybe will get to teach this for 1 or 2 years, but after that, you have to come back to teaching regular business school courses. And like I just revealed earlier, I've been teaching this course for 10 years. And I not only have this course at the Macomb School of Business that I teach on happiness, I've also been invited to the Indian School of Business to teach it, and to other schools, one in Thailand, etc., to teach it. And I've also taught it at, obviously at Macomb's, but at IIM Kozhikode, and 2 online courses on the topic. And I have a book on the topic. I have a Psychology Today blog on the topic. So there's a lot of interest in the topic of happiness, a lot of hunger for the topic, maybe particularly in the business community. And so that's kind of in brief the story, So I didn't necessarily aim in my early life to end up as a professor teaching a course on happiness, but I was always interested in the topic of happiness. And I consider myself very lucky to be in a position where I not only can research the topic, which I would have done anyway, even if I had been a computer scientist, and not only get an opportunity to research it, but actually disseminate information about it. So that's been my story.
That's beautiful. Thank you. But did you find, like when you started, you must have had an idea of your definition of happiness. And in the due course, you are at this point. Were there any discrepancies how you started off and what revealed in the process?
I don't know if I necessarily had a definition of happiness early on. Now, of course, because I think about the topic so much and this question comes up, how do you define happiness? So I do have a definition, but I just knew it when I had it, kind of a thing, which I think most people do. They don't necessarily kind of, want to come up with a definition of what does happiness mean. It's like, what is the definition of love? It's difficult to articulate it, but you know it when you have it, kind of a thing. And so I was after that feeling. And now if you ask me what the definition is, I would say that, it's a feeling of lightheartedness, of maybe you're doing serious things, but yet not taking yourself too seriously. It's the ability to see that, life is mysterious, it's beautiful, it's deep, it's wonderful, okay? And at the same time, it also has all the negative things, and to be embracing of everything. So, I think of happiness as an umbrella term that refers to not just positive emotions that we typically associate with happiness, like love and joy and laughter and all that, but also with the deeper feelings of gratitude and awe and hope and optimism, but even more deep of meaningfulness, of recognizing that we are all one, and deriving a sense of satisfaction from helping other people out, and recognizing that you have unique set of talents, unique set of interests, unique set of perspectives and tastes, and bringing it all to the fore and putting it to use in some fashion or the other, ideally in what you do for work, but even if not at work, at least in a hobby and so on. So it's a bunch of things. The way that I define happiness is it's not just pleasure, not just positivity. It's also the satisfaction from helping other people out, and also the satisfaction from identifying your intrinsic interests and pursuing them. So it's a combination of all 4.
Like, is that a goal? There was a question from one of our friends. Is it a goal that you acquire it, you achieve it? What is your say on that?
Yeah, I think that there is certainly some merit to thinking about happiness as a state that you want to be in. And in that way, it becomes a goal. The thing is that, of course, with happiness, it's one of those goals. I call it an ironic goal. The more you chase it directly, the less the chance that you're actually going to experience it. And we talked about love some time back. I think love is a similar goal. If you're in love, your object of love, let's say in a romantic relationship, you chase them too much, right? In some of the movies, you see these actors kind of chasing the object of their love too directly, and they're being a little bit of a pest. That isn't going to actually get them to where they want to be. That isn't going to be impressive. That's not going to get them the love that they want. So happiness is like love, and lots of sayings about this, including the saying that I like, that happiness is like a butterfly. The more you chase it directly, the less likely it is to come to you. But if you kind of do the things that are conducive for leading a happy life, then it'll come and quietly sit on your shoulder. So it's kind of like that. So it is. I do think that there's some merit to thinking of it as a goal, in the sense that just as if you want to save enough for retirement, that's a goal. You have to do a set of things that make it more likely. For example, save every month, things like that. Likewise, if you think of happiness as a goal, it forces you to think about, okay, what are the set of things that I need to do in order to achieve that goal? And if you look at the research, they say things like, all the way from mundane, simple, basic things like lead a healthy lifestyle, to more lofty things like, maybe even adopt a spiritual attitude. Okay, so that forces you to, the idea of happiness as a goal forces you to think about what are the means to the goal, and then it gives you an action plan that you can follow in order to achieve that goal.
That's nice. Thank you. So the next question is, you have a book, If You Are Smart, Why Aren't You Happy? What were you thinking of it? Like, can smartness equate to happiness?
Okay, the reason why I titled my book, If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Happy, is because it's a kind of a provocative statement to make, right? It's asking you, what has all the smartness led you to? Of what use is smartness if it doesn't guarantee your happiness? And this is an important question because a lot of people who are smart think of themselves as, being able to think through things systematically, analytically, break it down into sub goals, make an action plan, and go about achieving their goals. Okay, so in a way, that is the definition of smartness: the ability to kind of understand true cause-effect relationships, and being able to kind of also identify what might be a good path to take in order to achieve your goal. And certainly, successful people, by definition, successful people are people who have achieved their goals, at least conventionally successful people. They're wealthy, they're famous, etc. And the idea in this title is that your smartness and your success don't really amount to much if at the end of the day, you're not really happy. Because everything that we do ultimately is so that we can lead a happier, more fulfilling, more meaningful life. Okay, and if you subscribe to that assumption, then of what use is the smartness? Of what use is that success if it's not led you to happiness? Okay, so if you're so smart, why aren't you happy? So it's asking this question particularly. I think it's going to be particularly. I think it's going to land on people if they are smart. They consider themselves successful. Everybody around them thinks of them as being smart and successful, and yet they know deep down that they aren't really happy. So it's really meant for that audience, and it's kind of like natural that I was writing to that kind of an audience because I'm in the business school. I interact with business people, and these are people who are smart, who are successful, and yet may not be happy. So that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to kind of target my target audience.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Happiness is also an emotion, and you might have come across several sources. So if you can share a few sources that you found people found happiness, or at least they articulated they are happy, inwardly or outwardly, whatever it is, however that expression came about. Here in Smriti particularly, I'm looking at the knowledge, like can acquiring knowledge, anything, knowledge for that matter. Also, or if you know what happiness is, it's a knowledge that sits, you're aware of it. There is knowing. Does that itself translate to happiness is what I'm building a case here, if you can understand. Does knowledge translate to happiness also? Is it a source? Can it bring happiness?
So look, I'm not a scholar in terms of Vedic scriptures and spirituality as such, but my understanding is that knowledge in the in the way that the Vedas, or at least Hinduism, looks at it, there's two kinds of knowledge, right? There is a knowledge that is about the world, okay, and that you can apply to improve your chances of controlling the world. So, for example, that if you have knowledge to build a house, how to cut a wood, piece of wood, and shape it, and so on, then you'll be good at constructing a house, and that's useful. You can live in a nice place. Your basic needs are taken care of. You have a roof over your head, and perhaps you can entertain guests, you can socialize, and so on. And then there is the knowledge about the self, okay? And that knowledge is also very, very important, okay? And I think that you can think about knowledge as being helpful in many ways. Of course, it can also come in the way, right? So, for example, if you're very good at solving problems, okay, intellectual challenges and puzzles, you might think of every challenge that you face as something that you're going to be better at solving if you just think a little more about it, right? So if you have a huge hammer, everything in the world looks like a nail, okay? So sometimes knowledge can come in the way, and smartness can come in the way. And I talk about this as mind addiction, the idea that every single problem I can solve even better if I just think a little more about it. Well, there are some situations in which it's better not to think about the problem, okay? So knowledge can be a double-edged sword, okay? But I think the more knowledgeable you are in general, you're going to be better able to control external world, control other people, persuade other people, and so on. And if you have the kind of knowledge that is about self-awareness, then you're going to be able to understand yourself better, and you're going to be able to meditate better. For example, you're going to be able to regulate your emotions better, okay, and so on. And it can be very simple, like, for example, that, hey, just before I go to an important meeting where I need to be enthusiastic, I shouldn't be meeting this person, because this person always tends to be a wet blanket. They tend to bring my energy down. Okay, and that's self-awareness knowledge. You're aware of what kind of stimuli have what kind of emotional effect on you. Okay, so if you're more knowledgeable, it is going to help you out in many ways. It can also sometimes come in the way of your ability to achieve your goals. And I do want to end with one comment here, which is kind of a knowledge that is not necessarily translatable into words. Again, the two kinds of knowledge that I talked about right now, knowledge about the external world and knowledge about yourself, can largely be, you can use language, you can use words in order to convey that and communicate that knowledge, even if not to other people, at least to yourself. But there is a way of knowing that goes beyond words. It's knowledge about your sensations, and you could have an itch here, a scratch here, you could have a headache there, and these words, itches, scratches, headache, etc., are words, of course, but they're also referring to a sensation which is precognitive, which is beyond cognition. You don't need to know the words in order to experience the sensations. And there is a way to get knowledge by directly tapping into your sensation, experiencing them in a sensory fashion. And ultimately, that's what meditation is about, at least in my understanding, is to directly get in touch with what your body is telling you and what your senses are telling you. What are you able to observe? And that knowledge, which need not be or cannot be put into words, is I think very, very important. In a way, it is self-knowledge, but it's non-verbal self-knowledge. And it's really, once you get in touch with that knowledge, you realize that it's not really about the self either. It's about the universe. Okay. And that knowledge, I think, is very, very important if you want to be happy ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, if you understood, like, that's where I was going. I agree with you. So, there is so much information. We also translate information to knowledge in our news feeds and everywhere. And sometimes we do set aside some time to do some scriptural reading as well, to build our awareness, where we are coming from the core of us. So I was trying to lead you to there, how much of a pursuit, knowing the self, realizing of self can help you. I was trying to build a case there. That is beautiful. And that brings us to the next question. In your marketing experience, research and work, you have mentioned about a hedonic, the instant gratification leading to happiness. And Smriti particularly, where going is the knowing of self. We are emphasizing on that. That's the basis of Smriti project, the eudaimonic side of the if you want to term it, the philosophy. So what was your experience in those lines?
Is the question, have I experienced a lot of hedonic sources of pleasure?
Yes, your research shows what percentage of people really get into that happiness mode going to the instant gratification, or rather they go through a formal framework, like in the self-realization, where you need to spend some time with yourself, self-realize. So what was your research in those areas?
As most people do, I suppose, with hedonic aspects and okay. So let me just kind of like go back to this definition of happiness that I articulated some time back. You can think about happiness as being an umbrella term that captures at least 4 different kinds of sources of positivity. One is pleasure, the other is positive emotions like love, joy, etc. Third might be something called meaning, which is the satisfaction from helping other people out. And the fourth is purpose, your intrinsic satisfaction from pursuing intrinsic goals. You're good at knitting sweaters, and doing that makes you happy. If you're somebody who likes the legal profession, then being a lawyer, gives you satisfaction. And you can think about the first 2, pleasure and positivity, as being more hedonic. They do tend to not necessarily instant gratification, but certainly be short-lived in the amount of positivity you get out of it. You can have some joy, but it's not going to last forever, that kind of a thing. Whereas with the meaning that you get from the satisfaction that you get from helping other people out, and the satisfaction from pursuing intrinsic goals, they tend to last a little bit longer. Okay. And so I've had lots of experiences of pleasure and positivity, and I think they're very, very important. I've also had a lot of experiences of satisfaction from helping other people out, and definitely a lot of satisfaction from pursuing my intrinsic goals and interests, including happiness. And I'd say that it's not an either or question. In fact, I think personally that the more you lead a life of values in terms of helping other people out and pursuing your intrinsic interests and devoting your life to that kind of a purpose, the more pleasurable your life becomes. When you have this satisfaction of knowing that you've helped other people out, or you've spent a lot of time working towards a research paper, the meal at the end of the evening tastes that much better. Okay, that pleasure from that meal tastes that much better because you've spent time doing these more eudaimonic kind of activities. Okay, now beyond all this, there is a potential which to some extent I've sampled and experienced, which might be pleasure of the ananda, as they call it sometimes. I think in the scriptures, the idea being that you don't need to do anything in order to feel happy. You are happiness. You are the embodiment of happiness. And what it requires to tap into that happiness is to remove the layers of ignorance, and remove in particular the ignorance about who you are. And in this way of looking at things, you are the cosmic consciousness. You are the Brahman. You're connected with everything and everybody. You just have the ignorance or the illusion of separation from everything else. And of course, this is a very lofty concept. And I personally haven't really arrived at a point where I can experience it all the time or even that regularly. But I've had some experiences in which I felt that way, that, the boundaries have merged and I don't have this idea of separation of myself and the external universe. And it did feel very, very good. And so I do think that there's something to it. I don't know if there's a way in which you can kind of get yourself to experience it regularly. I believe, meditation and prayer, they talk about the 3 kind of paths, right? The karma yogi's path is bhakti yoga, or karma bhakti and jnana yoga. I guess, you could say that in a sense, what I'm trying to do is the jnana yoga path. Okay. But I'm also kind of combining it with a little bit of bhakti and perhaps karma yoga. But, that would be beautiful if that happened, right? That you are able to experience that state of bliss, that state of ananda by removing the veils of ignorance around you and the cobwebs, and you kind of shoo them away, and then you're able to be the embodiment of happiness. So I don't know, long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah, that is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. And please do visit Dr. Raj's blogs. Would you like to share about where you can find your research? Your blog?
Yeah, I have a website. URL for the website is happysmarts.com. So you can just type in www.happysmarts. It's one word. It's happy and smarts together, and smarts has an S at the end, .com. And you go there, then you'll find links to my Psychology Today blogs, also to my courses, and a link to my book, and so on. Yeah.
Thank you. And on a last question, we can talk about well-being. You mentioned about your new course. Where are you taking the integrating happiness and well-being? Anything that you want to share?
The new course, the online course, launched last year. Like I said, in November. It's not even been a year since it launched, and I'm really, really grateful that it's already been rated as one of the top 25 courses of all time by Inc. magazine, which is like a business-oriented magazine. And in that course, we try and look at the topic of organizational happiness, employee happiness, and we talk about I use a model called the Bamba model. On the determinants of happiness in the workplace. So the Bamba model has 5 letters, BAMBA, and each of the letters represents a source of happiness. And I begin the course by talking about why happiness is important in the first place. We might think happiness is a luxury at work, but in fact, happier organizations are more productive. They're more profitable. So even from the perspective of the bottom line of profits, it makes sense to have happier employees. And also talk a little bit about measurement of happiness and definition of happiness. I've already shared some of that with you. This idea that it's not just pleasure, not just positivity, it's also meaning, and it's also purpose. And so that's the set of topics that I cover in that course.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And when you said organization, that can include the quote unquote family also. It's an organization. And then come down to the self. An individual self, because we are organized beings within. And definitely we can translate this information into various areas, micro units of organizations. Beautiful.
Indeed, yeah.
Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to have you here. SMRITI team has been trying to build awareness. As mentioned in the beginning, you're building a repository of scholars who can articulate their experiences. And definitely professors like you are one such source. And that is the very reason why our team approached you, SMRITI Project. And happiness is one of our goals. Whether it be, reading scriptures and whatever it is that we can talk about to become a better you. And stay with us. Any comments, please do pass it on to SMRITI or to Raj. Please stay tuned. SMRITI has varied other topics that it has been covering. It's a journey to bring that awareness movement, become more aware of what was already established, an organized structure that Indian Vedic system had already orated or has it in written form through scriptures. SMRITI is one of the sources, smriti.upaasana.net. We have such talks one-on-one with several authors, scholars, researchers at our YouTube channel, Upaasana. Please do subscribe. We are working together. It's a universal goal for us. Today's topic was on happiness. I'm sure you have gained some insights. Stay tuned and thank you all. Thank you, Raj. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Satyavani. Take care and we'll be in touch.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
absolutely. Thank you. Namaste.